Hello and welcome to our annual Lend a Hand Luncheon. I'm Ana Alvarado Pierce, and I chair the board of directors for ACH and Family Services. ACH Child and Family Services. You'd think I would get that right after 5 years of being on the board, guys. So, by show of hands here today, how many of you are familiar with ACH? Oh, great. Okay, so how many of you, this is your first time learning about ACH? A few. Well, welcome, and to all of the others, thank you for being allies, and to all newbies, we hope you guys will be allies and ambassadors of ACH after today is done. So, for all of you, let me level set again. ACH protects children and preserves families. And again, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your willingness to continue to be curious about our purpose today during Child Abuse Prevention Month. I'm going to share some numbers with you. 4,719. The number of children in Tarrant County identified as confirmed victims of child abuse and or neglect. And thousands more go unreported. 110. The number of years ACH has been helping children and families. 2014. The year ACH paved the way and pioneered community-based care in Texas, which is now being implemented statewide. And in 2017, that became official with the state of Texas. And that all is because ACH literally pioneered the way and had the courage to do and change the care, the foster care, and how we care for our children in Texas. 24/7 are the operating hours of the Pat O'Neill Youth Emergency Shelter, providing immediate assistance to runaways and homeless youth, the only one of its kind in Tarrant County, serving ages 5 to 17. Where in its first week, the shelter helped 3 siblings, keeping those brothers and sisters together while the young one was just only 5 years old. 1,500. Approximately the number of children ACH provides counseling services each year and to the most vulnerable, including those with mental and behavioral health issues. Where society has given up or where the state has struggled in caring for our most troubled youth, ACH has stepped up. And while the foundation of our help is always focused on safety, hope, and love, our approach evolves to meet the needs of our children. Specifically, ACH created the Secure Assessment Facility, where staff can quickly stabilize crisis situations and provide crucial assessment and treatment to secure longer-term placement for youth. One such placement may be the Robert and Jane Ferguson Residential Treatment Center, which puts high-needs youth on an accelerated path to success. The list of innovative programs goes on, but I'd like to end with an area that we will explore today, and that is kinship care. This is when children who can't live safely with their biological parents are cared for by a relative. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, and sisters, even close family friends where relationship already exists. And all of us serving on the board of directors have our own purpose and our own why. And my personal why is, growing up, my brother and I had a brief stint with foster care service. And so at firsthand, at an early age, I learned what the power of strangers and just love that strangers can give and kindness was so moving, and it stuck with me all day. So for me, super passionate about serving with ACH, and with really serving with the team that I think their tenure, Wayne, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean leadership, 10 years, maybe 15 years. This year's gonna be Wayne's 25th year anniversary as CEO. So I mean, it's pretty remarkable. The need for this type of service in this area is so great that ACH offers 2 programs to help all of the caregivers in our community. Our hope is that you can share what you learned today with others who find themselves caring for a child who isn't their own. And at this time, I would like to invite Chris Mesa, Senior Pastor of Arbelon United Methodist Church, an ACH board member, to come forward and deliver our invocation.
Thank you. Shall we pray together? Gracious God, we are grateful for this day. We're grateful for the common element we share together. We come from all across our community sharing this common identity of advocacy. We are advocates for children and families. We advocate for their health and their well-being. We advocate for their safety and their security. We advocate for their humanity and their hope. Strengthen our resolve that we might continue this advocacy and do everything that is necessary to find both the resources and the will to carry out our mission, to love these children, to preserve families. We pray trusting in you, God. Amen.
Thank you. Now another group activity. At your table, you're going to find a little pinwheel lapel pens. Do y'all see them? They're right here. See? Everybody found theirs? Yep. These are really great, by the way. And for those of you who didn't know, the pinwheel is a national symbol for child abuse prevention, representing the bright, joyful childhoods all children deserve, and the positive cycles of love and support families should create. I invite you to wear your pin right now and to show your support. And please wear it anytime in April. Wear it often. I hope people ask you about it, and I hope that when you do get asked, you were able to tell and share the vision and mission of ACH so that people will continue to talk about it. I want to thank our presenting sponsor, Reliant Energy. We're very thankful to have our local energy provider sponsoring not only this event, but all of ACH's activities during Child Abuse Prevention Month. We are so thankful for your volunteers and generosity. Anybody here from Reliant? Please stand up. Thank you. Please, a round of applause. Thank you very, very much. We really appreciate it, and we very much are privileged to have a partnership with Reliant. Now, it's my honor to introduce the moderator of today's panel discussion, the mayor of Fort Worth, Maddie Parker. You may have heard of her. Maddie Parker is currently seeking her third term as mayor of Fort Worth, the 12th largest city in the United States, and the 4th largest and best and coolest city in Texas. That's right. And we're going to help you carry that. Her focus remains on improving the quality of life of every Fort Worth resident. Her results are undeniable. She's worked to bring together nonprofits and local hospital CEOs to streamline services for maternal and infant health. She's worked with city leaders on tangible public safety enhancements, focusing on youth and gun violence. She's leading efforts aimed at economic and community development, focusing on education, skills, and the city's workforce so that folks have the opportunity to succeed, and so that Fort Worth is prepared to meet the future workforce demand. She and her husband, David, have 2 sons and a daughter who they adopted. And for those of you who don't know, she's also passionate about ACH and the work that we do. She was a prior member of the board of directors, and her servant leadership was definitely seen and heard there, and we're glad you're leading the city and our mayor, Maddie. So thank you. So please join me in welcoming the mayor of Fort Worth, Texas, the Honorable Maddie Parker.
Appreciate the introduction. I was on the board until Wayne kicked me off. He just said, we didn't need you anymore. You seem too busy. Kidding, all jokes aside, it was truly one of my very favorite places of service in our city for all the reasons that each of you are here today to learn more about ACH and the important work, and specifically to learn more about kinship care today, which you'll get into that during the panel. As was already mentioned in Anna's introduction, this city is growing rapidly, and we just passed the city of Austin in population, which is where that 4th designation comes in. This crowd might clap. A lot of crowds are like, boo, we don't like that. We don't want to grow. I'm not sure how you do that. You put a big billboard up that says, please leave. But Fort Worth is growing and thriving for all the right reasons. And truthfully, our nonprofit community, our volunteers, our services, especially for women and children, are vitally important to the success long-term of Tarrant County and of Fort Worth. Over a quarter of our city's population make up youth under the age of 18, which is pretty phenomenal. We're a young city. And Tarrant County has more than 500,000 residents under the age of 18 as well. Today, our goal is many. It's first of all to make sure, if you didn't already know, the important work that ACH has been doing for over 100 years, 110 years specifically. But it's also to make sure you know the impact and the scourge that really child abuse can be on the city of Fort Worth, and quite frankly, on any community. It's amazing to me that child abuse can exist in all families. It is agnostic of income, of race, of neighborhood. It truly does happen anywhere. And while today we are talking a lot about child abuse specifically because April is Child Abuse Awareness Month, we're also going to talk a lot about public policy around the future of foster care in the state of Texas and how North Texas, Fort Worth, Tarrant County, Dr. Carson and this team at ACH and OCOK are really leading the way for the state of Texas. I don't have to tell this audience this because each of you probably understand it a bit because that's why you're here today. But this is incredibly difficult, harrowing work to work with kids and families in need, especially when there's an intersection of any kind with the foster care system specifically. The complex trauma that children experience at an earlier age, we know in youth can demonstrate higher levels of aggression, self-harm, suicidal ideation, and susceptibility to trafficking. And yes, human trafficking, sex trafficking happens right here in the city of Fort Worth. We know that youth are at a higher risk for becoming separated from their family, being disruptive in school, entering the juvenile justice system, or becoming homeless. And one thing that I think a lot of folks don't quite understand, and quite frankly, I didn't really understand it until we adopted our daughter, is that even when children are faced with neglect or abuse in their biological home and their families, most of the time, they still want to be home. They still want connection to family. It doesn't matter what you offer them. It doesn't matter if you offer them a beautiful new house and a fancy school and beautiful school shoes. They still want mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or aunt or uncle, whoever was raising them. So I am so proud that today's conversation is really to lift up the critical importance of kinship care. And in our family, it was fictive kinship, and for our daughter, Shani. Before we talk more about kinship, though, I'm going to return back for a minute. I'm going to use my script, Wayne. I'm doing so good. It's a reminder of the important work that ACH has done that we did not have to. Huge investments made possible by several individuals in this room here today helped us create our own RTC, or the Residential Treatment Center and the Secure Assessment Facility. Many of you probably haven't seen the facility firsthand. There's no reason you necessarily would. I remember I was still on the board when the RTC was opening and had the opportunity to tour it with staff, both on the treatment side and those that had constructed this beautiful space for our children. And y'all, these youth are facing the worst of circumstances. And probably because some of it was none of their doing, family circumstances, mental health issues, the system had failed them and there was no place for them to go. And RTC was created because Dr. Carson and his team recognized that this void was not going to be filled across Texas by anybody else. And it was for us to take the lead. And we've now seen a huge upward trend in foster care youth behavior. These kids are not hopeless. They deserve a second chance at opportunity in life. But again, it is really, really hard work. And we should all be really thankful for the men and women that are willing to serve those children at our RTC facility. On the foster care side, and from a policy perspective, as your mayor, it's really important for me to impart this. Wayne is really regarded as one of the very best top policy leaders, not in Texas, but across the United States. And with that, he'll tell you, or maybe he won't, it's an immense amount of pressure. And government is really good about moving the goalpost, constantly changing. Every new policymaker that heads to Austin thinks they have the best solution in foster care. And sometimes it falls on Wayne to try to fall in the gap, make sure they understand the investments the state of Texas has made in creating this region's success, now being implemented across the state of Texas. Incredibly complicated. And much of that happens, it's sort of like a duck on the water. You don't see how fast Wayne and his team are pedaling underneath, how many trips to Austin, how much economic uncertainty that ACH and OC has faced over the years. But truly, we are fortunate in the state to have a leader like Wayne and honestly, his entire team. So for that, I'm incredibly thankful. As Anna mentioned, today's focus is on kinship care. And we know when children can no longer live safely with their biological parents, it is oftentimes preferable that they go live with a relative. ACH strongly promotes the family-first approach because we know it does make sense for these families, of course, but importantly, it oftentimes makes most sense for these kids, and the outcomes show that over and over again. I've said this before in this room, and I think a lot of you may have heard me say this, some may be new. You know, if I could go back in time, our daughter's now 23, when she was removed from her home, it was not the right decision by the system. As wonderful as my husband and I are, and we have 3 children and now 2 biological sons, the trauma of removal by a mother that couldn't take care of her, and then an aunt that couldn't take care of her, and a grandmother that couldn't take care of her, that constant getting cast out was too much for her. And in many ways, the system failed, and our family stepped in as fictive kinship placement. And we did a great job. And she's a part of our family. I'm just being vulnerable with you. That's what today's conversation is about. And I try to tell that story when appropriate, especially among policy leaders, because for those that don't work in this space, it is so easy for them to make the assumption, that rich family over there, let's just give those kids over there. That's going to work perfectly. Just put them in a new school. Give them some new clothes. You know, a little bit of counseling will be fine. The trauma that oftentimes these kids have experienced runs deep, runs from multi-generations. It starts before their moms were even pregnant, and it is incredibly complicated. So the family-first model that ACH really promotes is incredibly important. We're talking today about over 260,000 children in Texas that are currently being raised by relatives who are not in the child welfare system. That is a huge win. But as you'll hear from our caregivers today, it's not without a lot of struggle, and it is complicated. And we hope that you'll learn more today and help be an ally and an advocate for kinship care and placement across Texas, but also for the work we do here at ACH. I'm going to brag on Wayne a little bit more because I get to bring him up here in a minute to also talk to you about the important work happening here. But I have gotten myself in trouble a few times because I have once or twice referred to Wayne as the most talented nonprofit leader in Fort Worth. And I really believe that, I do. And it's not just because he's brilliant, he's also pretty funny, he's very thoughtful, but more than that, Wayne brings people together. There are countless nonprofits and their leadership are better because Wayne constantly recognizes this is outside the boundaries of what ACH should be doing. I need to bring other partners to the table to make us stronger because at the end of the day, it's not about ACH, it's not about Anna or me or anybody else. It's about the kids that we're serving in this amazing city. I have been firsthand, I have seen children thrive because of what ACH does. As I said earlier, children are not hopeless. They just deserve a chance. And with people like Dr. Wayne Carson, we know they can do that right here in Fort Worth and Tarrant County. Dr. Carson.
Thank you. Regarding our board of directors, can anybody imagine anybody kicking Maddie off of anything? I don't think so.
I think I did term out.
You did term out, yes. First of all, thank you, Mayor Parker, just for everything you've done for us. Your integrity, your passion, your values, you are the right person for the right time for what you're doing for Fort Worth, and we need you, and we appreciate you, and thank you. Also, thank you for being here today. This is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and not a lot of people would volunteer a lunch to talk about child abuse and neglect. It is not a common topic that we like to talk about, but it's so important for us that you are here today because knowledge is power, and it's very important for us who often work in kind of a vacuum and do things that a lot of the community doesn't necessarily see, for you as leaders of this community and involved citizens of this community to take a little time to hear what's going on in our world, what are the important issues related to children and families, what do we need to do as a community to confront this problem. I mean, I say all the time, this is a great community to raise a family and to live, but we can't ignore the fact that we have over 4,000 kids a year that are victims of child abuse. So thank you for being here. Your increased knowledge about what we're doing is very, very helpful to us in many ways. So you've heard a lot about the things that ACH does, our treatment programs and our counseling programs and our amazing foster families that open their homes to take kids. Imagine for a second you're a 5-year-old child and something's not quite going on very well in your family, and all of a sudden some social workers start showing up and saying, hey, we're a little bit worried about you. What's going on? We want to make sure you're safe. And then imagine those social workers come back to you and say, we don't really feel like you're safe here. And then they have a couple of options. They might say, can you go pack your bag, get some clothes together, we're going to get in my car, and I'm going to take you to this foster family. So again, foster families are amazing families, but you're 5 years old, you don't know who these people are, you're leaving the people that you know, this is your house. What if instead they said, why don't you go pack your bag, we're going to go see your grandma, or we're going to go see your aunt or uncle, or we're going to still take you and make sure you're in a safe place, but it will be with somebody that you know. And in fact, that prevents you from having to go to court and having to go into the foster care system where there's a whole process that has to happen in order for you to be able to get home. So we're going to talk a little bit more today about these amazing families that step up and say, I wasn't really planning on this, or my house isn't quite big enough, or, I haven't put a car seat in a car for a long time, but, I'm willing to do it. I don't want my niece or my nephew or my grandchild to leave this family. I don't want them to go to foster care. I want to do whatever I have to do to keep our family together. So that is what we call kinship care. And we have a contract with the state of Texas to do some of this work, and the formal definition of kinship care is placing a child with relatives or fictive kin. What it may be. We have a lot of communities, a lot of networks in our community that have people that feel like a family member that may not be biologically related, but maybe they're a godmother, or maybe they're a very close family friend, or maybe they've been somebody that's been part of the family for a long time. So fictive kin is the terrible name we have for those people in our contracts. But somebody who has a significant relationship with the child. We like to call it family taking care of family. It's the oldest child welfare system known to man, and that is families stepping up to help each other when their family needs them. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit more today, and it's important to talk about because for a couple of reasons. One, the results when this happens, the outcomes for children are typically better if a family can stay involved. Mayor Parker already talked about that, and I'll show you some data to support that in a minute. It's also because it happens a lot more than we may be aware of. We have about 550 kids in the foster care system who are with a family member, but estimates are there are about 18,000 children in this community that are spending time with a relative. They may be living with a grandmother temporarily. They may be living with an older sibling. They may be living with an aunt or an uncle. So there are a lot of children in this community that are getting help from family. Oops, I forgot to click that. Okay. The other thing, so ACH's strategic plan has been really focused on what can we do to help with this? Because a lot of times that family member will say, yes, I'll do it, and then they're totally on their own. There's, how do I get this child enrolled into school and I'm not their legal guardian? How do I get health care assistance? How do I get anything done? What's out there that can help me? A very important part of making this work is making sure we are doing what we can to help those families, because if we can keep those kids out of the child welfare system, one, it's better for kids, one, it's better for families, and two, it saves the state a lot of money if we can do that. So it's a win-win-win kind of situation. So our strategic plan has been built on what can we do to take what we already do well, and that is foster care, and that is our treatment programs, and that is our shelter for runaway and homeless kids who need a place tonight. You might see a police car parked in front of one of the buildings when you leave tonight, and that would be, or this afternoon, and that would be a child coming into our shelter because there's literally no place for them to be right now. Our shelter is like our emergency room. So we do a lot of things well, but our strategic plan is looking at how do we move some of what we do here out into the community to help families that are doing everything they can to keep their family together. One of the things we noticed that when we started being in a position to be able to do this in conjunction with some of the work that we do at the state was that the percentage of kids in the foster care system that are living with a family member was very low in Tarrant County. And so before we even started doing programs, we did a year-long assessment of why is the number so low in Tarrant County? And we found a lot of things. We found some of it was our workforce really didn't believe that a family was a better option. They thought, we're taking a child out of that situation and getting them into that nice middle-class house in a beautiful neighborhood, and that's going to be better. Some of it was our court systems were concerned about keeping kids with families that had challenges and wanted to make sure that there wasn't something bad that happened by keeping a child with a family. Some of that was there just weren't any services for families that agreed to step up, and so it was too hard, heavy a lift to say, I'll do that because I can't do it without help. And so we did a year-long needs assessment to look at what were some of the barriers in the community, and then once we identified those barriers, we started to look at what are some things that we can do to support these families. So we now have a whole range of services that we offer. We have workers that work directly with parents that are trying to get their children home, that we call that our intensive permanency support program. We have we have our Kinship Navigator program. This says support for grandparents because a lot of the people in that program are grandparents, but it should say support for all kinship families. We have a lot of aunts and uncles. We have older siblings. So the Kinship Navigator program is a free service to help families that are willing to step up, keep children out of the foster care system, get connected, get supported, get information they need, and just get help doing what they've agreed to do. We also have services for families where we can get therapists and people into their home to help families because children often have some behavioral and mental health needs. Parenting today is different than it was when a lot of us were raised. So helping these families do what they need to do to keep their children safe. And then later this year, we're going to be launching a service called Intercept, which is a program specifically to support kinship families who have agreed to maybe take a 16 or 17-year-old back into the family that may have some more severe behavioral and mental health problems. So it's the idea of supporting families that are willing to serve children that may have some needs that will be challenging for any family, let alone relatives who agree to take a child. So we're building out a range of services, and here's some of the early results that we've seen. So we started at 19% when we took over a part of the system that allowed us to make decisions about whether a child would go to a kinship home or into a foster home. As I said, 19% of the children in Tarrant County were in a kinship placement before we started, which was in 2020. So we started this process in March of 2020. And then a week later, the first case of COVID was diagnosed in Tarrant County. And so we really didn't get much done that first year. We were in survival mode because we couldn't close. We couldn't shut down. We couldn't stop. We had to keep doing what we were doing. So we had to kind of focus on blocking and tackling for a year during COVID to get through that. Then in 2021, we did the needs assessment. And then here's what's happened since we started putting these programs in place. You can see that just this month, we hit almost 37%. So we have doubled in 3 years the number of children that are staying with kinship families. And you might say, well, is that better for kids? So this is a chart that actually in this chart, the smaller the line, the better. And this is an average of, so one of the things that's important when a child comes into care is that when we get them in with a family, we want them to stay with a family. When children have to move around a lot, we try them with one foster home and it doesn't work and they have to move to another foster home. Try them with one family member, it doesn't work, we have to move to another family. We will do that if we need to, but if we can get a placement the first time where a child is stable, stays there, doesn't move, that's better for everybody. So this is our placement moves per 1,000 days of care chart. So you can see in traditional foster care, we have about 1.5 moves for every 1,000 days of care that we provide. Down to the middle chart is our kinship families that they don't have a license to do kinship. They are supporting, they've stepped up to say, we're going to do this. Their placement moves are almost 50% less. And then when we get down to a licensed kinship family would be an aunt or an uncle or grandparent that says, not only am I going to be providing kinship care, I will get licensed as a foster parent to do it as a foster family. So you can see almost no movement for those families. So the policy part of this that's important is this is something that is hard to do. Traditional funding streams don't pay for kinship services. They pay for foster care. They pay for treatment. Traditional contracts don't include this. So we're really trying to move the needle on how do we start to build out these services, even though there's not a great level of federal or state support for this, but we know it's right for the community. And we've had some amazing foundations and philanthropists step up and say, we see your vision, we believe in it, let's get this started. And once your workforce starts to get the skill set for doing this, once we start getting some data like this that show that it can work, that gives us a compelling case to go back to Austin and say, look, we need to start funding these programs because we could be doing it for a lot more kids in a lot more places if we had more support for that. So that's the policy side of the house, which is the boring part. Let's talk about the fun part, and let's actually quit hearing from me and hear from some of the folks that are actually doing this work. So we have a very, very special panel of folks that are here with us today, and these are folks who are actually doing kinship care and supporting our kinship programs. So I'm going to call them up. Let's start with the supervisor of our Kinship Navigator program, Chantel Bedlington. Chantel, you may have seen her on the Fort Worth Report's Unsung Heroes. She was one of the 52 Faces of the Community recently. She's been an amazing leader of our Kinship Navigator program. So she's going to join us today. Come on up, Chantel. Yeah. Sonia Moore is also with us today. Sonia is one of our Kinship Navigator Outreach coordinators. So Sonia, thank you for being here with us today. And then we have two of our kinship families that have stepped up to do this work and be part of our programs, Erica Razor and Tay Robson. And Tay's actually started out and is now an employee of ours. So we're thrilled we get a double win with Tay. So we're going to do little panel-style interviews and discussions. You guys have your mics? Did you turn yours on?
I did.
Okay,
yeah.
great. All right.
Well, apparently y'all aren't supposed to sit by me, and so they're going to cram you onto one couch over here. I was hoping for like my Oprah moment where like I reach across and we really connect, but apparently not. So I'm going to scoot out here.
All right, I might lay down
okay.
then.
Okay, good.
Just doing what we were told.
I know, same. That's just best, absolutely. Well, first of all, we have a set of questions, but I do think it's really important because this is all of you in their capacities. This is not just a job. This is a calling. It takes much more of you than the average profession. And so my question sincerely is, why this role? Why are you deciding this is something that you're called to do right now? And Chantel, if you want to start, that's great.
Sure. Why? Well, because I was a kinship caregiver. So before starting in this role, before this grant even existed, I was a kinship caregiver, which, I'll share a little bit more about in a minute. But the 266,000 that you mentioned in Texas of informal kin, that's what I was. In fact, the 2020 census says for every one child in foster care in the state of Texas, there are 24 children for every one, in a home where the grandparents have always taken care of the grandchildren, or a parent was incarcerated, or a parent passed away, and someone has stepped up in lieu of foster care. And I was that parent, and you're scrambling. You're scrambling. And so without this program, there's not a lot of support for those caregivers. And I know because I was one, so that's my why.
Thank you.
My why is similar to Chantel's, but also I was raised by a sister, and I always say I'm not going to cry when I talk about my sister, but she was much older than me, and her husband were in their early 20s, and they had a third child of their own on the way when they took me in, and I was 12, and raised me, and it was just wonderful. It was a wonderful placement for me. They were wonderful parents to me, and I love them dearly for it. So that is a big part of my why. I'm also a kinship mom, so my husband and I have 4 biological children, and then 2 years ago we adopted a great niece. And so, yeah, that's a big why. Just the relationships with people and helping other families and understanding that it's a hard place. And if it's hard for me and it felt lonely for me, then it probably feels that way for other people as well.
That's beautiful.
My why is ultimately because my nephew was not in a safe home or environment, and there was nobody else to step up. And of course, I want him safe. And so I made the decision that I'm going to be that person for him. I'm going to be his safe place. So that's my why.
How old is your nephew?
When he's currently 6, about to be 7, but when he came into my care, he was 5 years old.
Thank you. Last but definitely not least.
My why was family. My kids are my grandkids, and so when the call came, there was nothing else to do but answer it. We're family, and because we're family, we should take care of family.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Wayne.
So, Tay, you kind of led into the next question. You were asked to do this, and you said yes, and it was kind of like, yes, we'll figure it all out later, because I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know what challenges I'm going to have, but you knew that you had to say yes, and then so can you give us all a little bit of an insight as to what were some of those challenges? What was the hard part of saying yes that you may not have even known when you said yes, and why it's hard?
Sure, I can start with that. We had 3 biological children already, and we received a call on April Fool's, mind you, on April 1st, that my husband's stepsister's children, so my niece and nephew, were going to need someplace to go. And the family knew we weren't super connected, but we had been around the kids, we'd seen the kids, so we'd met the kids. And the family knew we had adopted before, and so said, someone has to take these children. It was a sibling group, and we know that sibling groups often, especially they were on the cusp of, the preteen years, the cusp of teen years, they're likely not going to be able to be together in foster care. And so we need somebody who's going to step up and take them and keep them together, and a family member has to do it or they're going to go into the system. Are you guys willing? And we had 24 hours to decide to talk to our kids and unload our large SUV of all the sports equipment and get it empty and go to Kansas, which is where they were. And pick them up. And I think the challenges, I remember getting there, and again, we're in lieu of them going to foster care. And I remember getting there and getting to the home, and the trash bag thing is real. They're loading up all their clothes and their toys and things and, in trash bags. And saying, okay, now what? Now what will you do? Are you going to check in on me? Are you going to help me? Or what do I do next? And again, this program didn't exist, and I was new to this world, and she goes, you're going to Texas. I don't know, maybe call Child Protective Services in Texas, see if they'll help you. So I got to Texas, and I called Child Protective Services, and they said, are the kids not safe? And I was like, no, they're safe. And they said, well, then you're good to go. And I was like, what does that mean? We have a preteen girl who's just been ripped out of her home, and what does that mean? And my nephew had fetal alcohol syndrome, or he still has fetal alcohol syndrome. I don't know if you know what that is, but the challenges were huge. And what does it mean that we're just supposed to figure it out? It took us over a week to get them in school. They gave me a power of attorney that expired in a year, and then I really realized that a power of attorney didn't mean anything to anyone. And so those were the challenges. It's kind of just figuring it out. How do we survive? How do we get them to the doctor? How do we get them the care? How do we do it?
I guess the hard parts for me were similar to Chantel's. Our great niece came from Alaska, and so she had been in and out of the foster care system there for 3 years. And we had tried to get her at one time when her mom passed away, and we were unable to. And so she was placed with a family member who wasn't a safe option. And she was there for a few years, and then she went into foster care. for a little over a year, and then they sent her back home. And in the meantime, we kept trying to get her, but we were here in Texas. We had lived in Alaska when she was small, so she did know who we were. The hardest part was when they sent her here, the state of Alaska did similar. It was like, okay, you're a safe place, here you go. And so I thought when she was brought here that the person who delivered her to us would have paperwork and a box of things on what we were supposed to do next. And there wasn't really any of that, except if you want to adopt her, the state of Alaska will help you do that. And so we weren't really sure. And then someone from Texas called, and then Alaska and Texas got in a big argument because Alaska said, no, they don't have to become foster parents. We don't care if they're a safe placement, you say they're safe, she can stay there. And the state of Texas actually did want us to become foster parents. And so the first 2 years that she lived with us, it was kind of an argument. And finally everyone decided, okay, well, I guess if they can't adopt her without the foster license, then go ahead and get your foster license. So she'd already been with us for 2 years. We got our foster care license, and we were able to adopt her after that. And so it was hard navigating that in between, especially because for 2 years we couldn't get her the mental health help that she needed. We couldn't. She came to us with a condition and needed a surgery on her arm, and we had a very hard time getting those things because we did not have legal custody of her. The state of Alaska did. And so anytime we took her anywhere, we had to get permission from them to get these things done. And some places wouldn't accept that. So a lot of the mental health authorities and places that we took her trying to get her the mental health help that she needed was not available to us until after she was adopted. And so that was 2 years of time that we really struggled with a lot of things and a lack of care for her. So that was very difficult.
So as I mentioned before, I got a phone call, and in that phone call, I was told basically that my nephew, he was in a very physical and emotional abusive home. It was unsafe for him. There was a lot of domestic violence, drug use, and so without a doubt, I went and picked him up and brought him back home. So what differs my story a little bit from theirs is that luckily I had the help of Kinship Navigator program, and without their help I don't know where we would be right now. And it was really wonderful. They guided us and helped us with resources and kind of painted and showed the way. And I remembered that in the beginning, the scare of, well, where do I go? What do I do? There's, I don't have anything. I've got to get this child into school. He wasn't in school. And mind you, he should have been at 5. And, well, how do I get him to a doctor? Well, how am I going to pay for this doctor? So it was a lot. And I am very thankful for the Kinship Navigator program and the help with that.
So my testimony differs a great deal from all of these. On April 21st, 2018, my daughter was murdered. And so when I showed up to get my children, there wasn't a question as to yes or no. What I was not expecting was, although the circumstances kind of dictated themselves, the obstacles that we began to face were trauma. They were home when their mother was killed. They were grief, loss, things that I had not mentally nor emotionally prepared for. And then you had to figure out on top of those things, how in the devil am I going to provide for these kids? I am in another chapter of life. Things are very different. I had an expectation for my own life at this time, and now that entire story is rewritten. And it's not a choice that I can make to say, I'm not going to do this.
How old were your grandchildren?
My grandboys were just turning 2, 3, and 4, and my oldest one, she was killed 4 days before his 5th birthday.
Man. One thing that's been mentioned in the conversation so far is you talked about the need to be foster care parents versus not being foster care parents. I know firsthand it's a very complicated decision. Kind of talk about what that felt like. Each of you have a different perspective, and even on the provider side, how to help families understand the significance of that decision.
Yeah, I'll speak to that a little bit. It's not a decision for that they can make for so many of our kinship caregivers, because unless there's a formal state removal, there's not an option to become a foster parent. So the vast majority of the families that we serve in our program it's really geared to help those informal kinship caregivers, those caregivers that are outside of the foster care system, which is the 24 for every one and the 266,000.
And pause for a second. The thing that's significant about that across Texas is otherwise, it was already mentioned here, you're handed some kids and best of luck. They're just checking the box. Okay, that kid's safe. We're gonna go to the next kid. And you're expected to raise children in a really difficult environment. So
Yes.
what you're doing here at ACH is incredibly significant.
Right, and I think it's important that we remember too, we know kids in foster care come from trauma, right? Everybody knows that. Kinship kids have come from trauma. They're not in kinship care without trauma. They've all experienced grief. They've all experienced loss. They're all going through significant trauma. There's significant trauma. And so without this program, like ours, without this funding and without donors and those kinds of things, those families really are on their own. And so we're able to go in, our kinship navigators are able to go in, they work hand in hand in home with these caregivers for 6 months to a year. And they're really able to do training, because foster parents go through a lot of training, and they get parenting classes and they get a lot of supports. And so we're able to kind of mirror some of that and do some in-home support and some in-home parenting training and get them into trauma therapies and things like that.
That's well said. Thank you. Anybody else want to share their perspective?
I mean, I would just say similar. Like, I think a lot of it for us, or for me, so I was a kinship navigator and now I'm our outreach coordinator, but going into the homes and building relationships with the families, because I think so many kinship families, you feel lonely, like there's nobody else out there doing this, and is it something we should talk about? And it seems like a taboo subject, and so many people, you say kinship care, and people don't know what that means. Part of my job going out in the community is just strictly to let people know what kinship care, what we're talking about. And we're talking about grandparents and aunts and uncles and siblings. We've had several siblings recently, and nieces and nephews and aunts and uncles and fictive kin raising other people's children unexpectedly that they didn't plan to do. So it's just building the relationships in the homes and just kind of guiding them through, what they're missing out on not having that foster care license.
If I could add to that, I think a lot of times the expectation is when you get kids that you're related to, that you are not allowed the safe space or room to complain or to not be okay with what's happening. So people automatically assume, well, they're related to you. You should be okay with that. And it's not that you're not okay with it. It's that it ratifies your life in such a way, but you don't always have the room or the support of network to go and sit down and process through that and talk through what's happening to your life.
Yeah.
So, Eric and Tay, could you dig a little deeper into what did Kinship Navigator do for you? I mean, when we had the opportunity to start this program, it was started by Chantel and Sonia and folks that had experienced this. We had a good sense of what can we do that will be helpful, and it's different things for different families. So can you talk a little bit about what Kinship Navigator did as part of your journey that was helpful to you?
Absolutely. So when I did get that phone call and I didn't know which direction to turn, and I found out about Kinship Navigator program, it was a lifesaver. Whenever I picked up my nephew, there was no formal placement. So my situation with my nephew was the same as she had mentioned before. It was an informal placement. So you don't get that support. I have other children as well, and we live on a very tight income, and we didn't have documentation to be able to get him into school, get him to the doctor, get him some type of insurance, all the things that is needed to properly care for this child that we just took on. And Kinship Navigator program help paint that way. They help pave that road for us and helped guide us how to get those documentations although that still wasn't that easy, but it still gave us direction. They have helped us along the way with just being there and giving the great support. There was times, since there wasn't that informal placement, where I was weary that the biological mother was going to show up in my home and take him from me and place him back into that situation again where it was unsafe. And Kinship Navigator helped me by guiding me to resources to find an attorney and to follow the appropriate steps and routes legally to be able to get custody. And I am forever so grateful for that, because we no longer have to live in that scare anymore. So it's very wonderful.
For me, I think the Kinship Navigator program helped me with connection. It provided a viable community of individuals that understood what was happening, that I could share with, that could help chart the way, that could process through the steps. It gave me the building blocks and foundational tools to create my own GPS so that I could figure out what way are we going. And if this obstacle happens, how do we move it? And who do we talk to? So for me, I had an amazing navigator. She was phenomenal. She still is. She's a coworker now, and she's still phenomenal. But she came in, and instead of saying, you know, what do you need? A question I couldn't answer. She said, how do I walk alongside you? And we figure it out. And that helped me a great deal.
I think that's such a great point about the program, too. And in some cases, it's not new services we're creating, it's just helping you get connected with services that already exist in the community that you may not have known about, or you may not have known how to get qualified for, or you may not have known you were eligible for. So it's not a lot of new stuff. It's a lot of connecting with what's out there that you're eligible for, and some new stuff, I think, as far as the paperwork and maybe the support groups. Okay.
You know, I think we hear a lot, and I'm sorry, I'm just jumping in. I think we hear a lot.
I've never heard you apologize for doing that before.
It's not nice.
He means that out of love, I think.
This might be the last time I apologize.
No.
No, but we hear all the time, and I think what Tay said was really important, that she felt so isolated, and that she didn't feel the ability to say, this isn't what I wanted. And we hear that so often, and we are a staff of primarily kinship caregivers who get it, and I think that's so huge, because while every one of us is willing, it's family. Family says yes. Family takes care of family. Family says yes, and family will do it. It's not what anybody expected or wanted. It's not the future we planned for. And so I think that's huge. I remember recently I had a 19-year-old caregiver caring for her siblings, and I said, I know this isn't what you wanted. And she just cried and said, it's the first time anybody said that to me. That's so huge. And the isolation of primarily grandparents, even though we're primarily a panel of aunts here, it's primarily grandparents who are now raising children in retirement, older siblings who are raising younger kids when all their friends are in college. I mean, that's isolating.
Yeah.
So I think that's huge.
Yeah.
So the question about grandparents, or the point you made, is important, I think, to bring out, because there's such a high percentage of grandparents that are caring for their children. And you were so beautifully vulnerable with this audience about this chapter of life that you were in and excited about, and that all was ripped away from you at the same time you lost your daughter, which I'm sure you didn't get time to grieve properly. You are now a mother to these children. Talk about what that has been like for you, losing. It's got to be a grief of that chapter also, and having to thrust yourself back into parenthood for children that needed you desperately.
For me, it was. The grief piece was a big, huge piece, because you don't grieve. I have 2 children, biological children that are still with me, who are adults, which we'll talk about that later. I'm still parenting them. But anyway, but you don't. So I've been in social work and social services for 32 years. I've been at the home where there's crisis. I've been the person that you call for the home visit, or this horrible, terrible something, and I'm the person here that has been tasked with walking alongside this human being. You can't access that when it's you. You don't realize when it's you that you could have some of those tools. You do have some of that information. You're grieving, and grief brain does not operate like normal brain. Grief brain says, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't even know if this really happened. How long is this going to be our condition, and can this be changed? Well, it can't be changed. And I think that when I became connected to the idea that this was a permanent thing, because I knew immediately they weren't going anywhere. They're never going anywhere. And at that point I said, what does that really look like for my life? Because I'm supposed to be Stella. There's supposed to be some groove getting back here. I gave everything to my children who are now adults, and I said, why, God, have you decided to give me babies? Not even adolescents, not even teenagers, God, you gave me babies. And it was all the things. Putting a car seat in a car. I was like, what? This is new. They did something different to this. I'm sure this is not the way it was. It was going to the school and having to enroll them in school. Yeah. And having people ask you for things you don't have access to because you're not their biological parent. It's talking to individuals about their dad, who I didn't have a baby with him. I was like, I can't answer that. I'm sorry. We'll have to call his mama. I mean, I can't answer it. So it was being put in some very compromising positions where you absolutely did not have the information. Yeah. You could not answer the questions. At the same time, trying to figure out, how do I support these kids who, yeah, we have our own trauma. Yeah, we have our own grief. But by comparison, I'm their grandmother, but my daughter was their mom, and they lost their mom. So you had to figure out how to navigate their grief as well.
Beautifully said.
Would you guys be open to some questions from the audience if we opened it up? Anybody want to ask a question?
There's one back here.
Elaine.
Hi there. Good to see you.
So if you didn't hear Elaine's question, she and I have been looking at how abuse and neglect, especially even neglect, Elaine's kind of the mother of, it's not all physical abuse, it's not all sexual abuse. 70 to 75% of the kids that come into our system come in because of neglect. So lack of parental supervision, weekends without food, not being taken to medical appointments. So the question is where, and a lot of those kids are ages 5 and under, so the question is where do those kids go? So there are a couple of answers to that question. One is this is a great option for a lot of those kids that previously may have come into the foster care system. So now I think we have more ability to support these family members who say, I can, that's that yes, but now what do I do? And to come in with, well, here are some ways that we can help you. The other chart that I showed was specifically for kids in the foster care meaning there has been a removal from their family. So we have twice as many of those kids in kinship placements now than we had before. And we're still moving up on that trend. So I think that idea of those younger kiddos having more of an ability to keep these younger kiddos with their family members is part of a really good solution.
Wayne, before Elaine asks her, can stop the echo.
Before you ask the other question, Elaine, I'm curious, do you know off the top of your head the successes we've had? Kinship placement happens regardless of age. Children are in a safe place, and let's say it's mom or dad that the children were removed from, a success in rehabilitating that family so the children can return back into their biological parents.
So Maddie's question is, when a child comes into the child welfare system, the state of Texas legally takes custody of that child for a 12-month period, and then the family that they were removed from has the ability to go back to a court and say, okay, I didn't want to lose my child. I know there were problems a year ago, but things are better now. And we walk alongside with those families to try to help them get their children back. And so about 40% of the kids that are removed from their families are able to successfully return to their families. Their families have made progress. They've gotten substance abuse treatment. They've moved into better housing. They have gotten a better job, they've learned some better parenting skills, they've gotten some of their treatment for their own mental health, and are able to get their children home. So we're able to get a group of those children that may be staying with a kinship caregiver temporarily and then going back to mom or dad. About 40% of those kids do end up being reunified with their family. The rest may stay with a kinship placement. At some point, some children do become eligible for adoption if there's no family member ever that is going to, if there's no family member that can take responsibility for that child, then there is an option to look for a family who's willing to adopt them. Do you want to take that, talk about our concrete services piece of what we do?
Yeah, I would gladly do that. Yes, we do offer concrete services. It is a huge part. I was thinking of you, Mayor, when you were talking about the many different kinship homes your daughter went through first. And we hear that a lot. We hear, I can't do this anymore. You know, before we come in, they're going to have to go into foster care. I can't do it anymore. I can't pay my bills. We can't afford this. I don't have the space. And our program is able to come in and be that stop that makes it where they can stay by providing, maybe they need beds, maybe they need, like you said, laundry services, maybe they need transportation, because now this child has so many appointments. They're seeing an occupational therapist and a physical therapist and a mental therapist. And so they've got all of these things, and we have so many appointments now, and my gas has tripled. And I need help with that. And so it's gas cards or it's bus passes or, whatever the support service is. But we do offer those concrete supports and bill payments and the help to kind of navigate this new family. And our navigators, I say all the time, they're jack of all trades, because they're in there, they're doing, parenting support, and they're doing, intervention. And then they're like, let's write a budget, And so it's just, we're kind of hitting it from all the angles.
Yeah. And I love that part of the program because it blows the mind of auditors in Austin, because state contracts can't, like, why are you buying washing machines for your families? Or why are you getting a car repaired? Or why are you buying car seats? And so that money is not state funding. That is all part of philanthropy that says, man, if we can, it makes no sense to not get a child back with their family because of a car seat or because of beds or because of a washing machine. So we are really fortunate to have donors and support from this community that realizes that is a small thing to do for a big outcome. And so that's, again, by being a local entity, we can do things that a typical state agency can't do.
That's awesome.
And it means everything. It means everything.
I was just going to add too, there's that little piece, right, of normalcy for kids. And I don't know why this also gets me emotional, but a lot of the kids that go with kin that weren't expecting them don't have the funds, right, to raise 4 kiddos. My kids are fortunate, right? They get to do soccer and they get to play it for school, but they also get to play select soccer. And they get to do these fun activities that we consider normal for all of us, right? And a lot of these kiddos go into kinship care, and all of those things are kind of stripped away. And I think that's one little piece I know we've done a few times that has just really touched my heart, is when a kiddo's like, I really don't want to stop my karate class, but grandma can't pay the $30 or whatever for the next couple months or whatever it is. And I just love that we get to give them a little bit of what we all think as normal for childhood. So that's a little piece of that just really touches my heart. When we can do those little things and give things like washing machines and refrigerators and things when people are using coolers, that to us it's normal. Everybody has a refrigerator, but the truth is that some people don't. And so I love when we can do those just little things mean a whole lot.
That's awesome. Any other questions for audience? We all done?
Somebody needs to ask Erica where she got her glasses. So.
They are very cool.
Do you like those, Wayne? Thank you. I actually got them online.
They're awesome.
They're great.
Thank you so much.
I have one more question as we close out. Each of you are amazing women in your own capacities. And having been in your shoes, it's hard to not lose yourself in your role as caregiver. So if there is someone here tonight, it's night because it feels like it's night, that maybe didn't know the impact, and you shared your stories with them today, share with us what it's been like. How have you held on to your sense of identity and some kind of normalcy in the storm of trying to raise children that you weren't expecting to raise, which is really complicated?
Therapy? No, truly. I mean, I think this role has been huge for me, and you know, I get to do this. So in the midst of, I say all the time, in the midst of going like that was so hard. This is so hard. This is not normal. Oh wait, no, it is. You know, it is normal. And so I think the role has been huge for me. The advocacy that I've gotten to do for the role, you know, just that's been important to me, is just really connecting to all these other amazing caregivers who are stepping up in some of the hardest situations. We had I think we've had 2 or 3 caregivers now who were raising grandchildren, were first placed with them in their RV because they were about to travel. I mean, talk about a life change. And so that's just huge to me. Like, the resilience is just amazing. Just amazing.
I would tell you this, that I identified as a mom of 4 boys before I got a 13-year-old daughter. So my identity changed very much, and it has been a difficult journey. We're still in the midst of that a little bit. But I think, just like Chantel said, being in this role, advocating for what is important for all kinship families. And I have a friend who happened to have daughters at the same time I had sons, and so she sent me all the books and all the things. And so I do, you know, I think kinship caregivers lose a little bit of their identity. And being a boy mom was all I'd known, and it's very different raising a daughter. And then when you add that your daughter came with a lot of trauma, it's very hard. So, I just think doing good self-care, that was a goal, I think, last year, maybe the year before, giving myself the time to do the things that I enjoy, walking, gardening, hiking, and just being with people who are like-minded and that we have the same goal, which is to really help kinship families.
So in my situation, we already had a pretty big family. I have 2 girls and a boy, and then my husband also had 2 boys already. So we just kind of added to our chaos. So it was great, and it still is. But as a mother of 6 children, it is crazy, and you do forget to take that time for yourself and to remember, who am I? Who was I? Who am I going to continue to keep being? And so I think taking that time out for myself to, even if it was my 10-minute Bible study in the morning or my affirmations in the mirror saying, you got this, you're going to mom today, and you're going to be awesome, and it's going to be a great day. Even those little things have helped me along the way.
For me, I am a person of faith. So my faith was a huge foundation to my identity. And once you change my title from Nana to Nana Mom, I found that I did know what to do. I did. All the things that I had done in my life, unbeknownst to myself, I didn't realize had prepared me for the worst time of my life. And I didn't anticipate that working in just this kind of community, the helping community, the servant community, would be the way that I would be able to retain and maintain my identity. And I learned quickly that the greatest version of me is always manifest when I'm helping somebody else. And that's why this role actually became more appealing the more I got involved, because I finally got to see people that needed to hear from people like us.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank all of you. We have a lot of people in this room that believe in kids and believe in families, but it's so hard to give people a sense of what we see every day. And your willingness to share your stories and to be open and to speak on a panel in front of a group is really, really meaningful. It's impactful, and very, very much appreciate you. So thank you, and let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you again, Madam Mayor and Dr. Carson, and to our panelists. You all are doing God's work, and you know it, and I know you guys will continue to do God's work, so thank you again for sharing your stories. Every year we do this luncheon to raise awareness, and we hope that today we touched your hearts and your minds. I know we fed you, and I know we fed your brains. And so, again, we hope that we captured your heart and your mind. And we're going to ask for some money, okay? There is no shame in my game. So here's our ask, and I'll be very specific. So spread the word about what you heard. Share and follow ACH's post on social media. And if you have any questions about that, please grab any one of us, and we'll let you know what to do and what our handles are. Support your support. So pin the wheel and wear the blue all month of April to again show your support, and post your pictures wearing your pin. Tag us if you can, tag ACH. We've got a backdrop over there, so please, before you leave, take a selfie, a good photo op with Dr. Carson and Mayor Parker. So please help us. And then also, again, give. You will notice you have little cards on your table. Everybody see them? So if you haven't already today, supported today's event with a financial gift, please consider giving before you leave. Fill out the card, insert it in the envelope, and leave it on the baskets on your way out, or scan the QR code. It's pretty easy. As you learned, ACH's kinship programs support families in many ways, and we rely on help from our communities and our partners to continue providing the resources these families and children need. Right now, there are children who need safety, healing, and hope. But hope doesn't happen by chance. It happens because of people like you who choose to act by making an investment in their lives. So again, we're asking you to be that difference today and to be the hope today. Every dollar raised is a lifeline. Every contribution is a statement that we will not look away. So I invite you, let's not just raise awareness, let's act. Whether it's a one-time gift, a monthly pledge, or sharing our mission with others, your generosity will shape a child's future. Because when you lend a hand, you change lives, and together we can protect them. Every child deserves to be safe, and to be heard, and to be loved. And just recently, and very relevantly, the Chief Justice Jimmy Blacklock, a few weeks ago, delivered his inaugural State of the Judiciary address before the joint session of Texas House of Representatives and the Texas Senate. So if you will humor me for just a little bit, I do want to share and quote him, because I think it's very relevant to the work that we're all doing, to what we heard today, because y'all, we are only as good and we're only as healthy as our children in this state are. Okay? So, and here's what he said. He said, "Finally, I mentioned that the consequences of whether we win the fight against crime and drugs fall mostly heavily on the poorest and most vulnerable Texans. At the court, we see the most vividly in cases where the state is attempting to terminate the legal bond between a parent and a child. And nearly all those cases, families have been damaged or destroyed by drugs, often methamphetamine. If there's one thing you could do to help these families, it would be to help law enforcement win the war on hard drugs like meth. But innocent children are always the victims in these cases. And it's tempting when we see children in these circumstances to want them removed from their failing parents as soon as possible for their protection. But we have to remember this. Just as surely as God made those precious children, God also made those families, or that family. Using the coercive power of the state to take children away from their God-given parents, to destroy a family should never be our first instinct. It should always be our very last resort. Termination of parental rights is a civil death penalty. When the state goes to court to take somebody's children, it's not opening up a collaborative therapy session. It's initiating adversarial litigation of the highest stakes imaginable. We need to do more, and ACH is that more. ACH is a place where not only a child, but families can come here and have their body, mind, and soul healed. So please, thank you, and have a safe drive back. And we look forward to seeing you again. And if you have any questions, I would encourage you to reach out to Wayne and tour the facilities around the campuses. We're happy to do that. I'll happily join and be on those tours with you. But really, it is a treat to have this service here, to have the people working here, and to have this in our community. So thank you again for your time.